Happy Monday. So I just have one item at the top. Secretary Kerry, as the White House announced, Secretary Kerry will be visiting Panama July 1st, which is tomorrow, to attend the inauguration of Panama's president-elect, Juan Carlos Varela. We congratulate President Varela on his victory in Panama's history of peaceful, democratic transfer of power. We have a growing trade relationship, excellent security cooperation, and share many of the same concerns on regional and multilateral issues. Panama is also an important partner of the United States, and we look forward to continuing our close relationship. During the inauguration, Secretary Kerry will also meet with other Central American leaders to discuss the issue of unaccompanied children who have illegally crossed the border to the United States. A sustainable solution to this urgent situation requires a comprehensive approach to address issues of security, prosperity, and governance, all of which play a role in migration, especially the migration of unaccompanied minors. We hope to continue working with the Central American and Mexican governments to address the complex root causes of migration and identify ways the United States and countries in the region can more effectively contribute to the effort. And Vice President Biden was in Guatemala just a few weeks ago, where he announced U.S. assistance to increase the capacity of these countries. And I know the President will have an announcement later this afternoon, but the Secretary's meetings will be part of our effort to engage with these governments and discuss the root causes of these issues.
Sorry, the President will have an announcement on what?
I think you saw on the news or in the newspapers earlier today, the President would have more to say on assistance they're announcing. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
So before
did you get a haircut, Matt?
I did.
Okay. Noted for the transcript. Go ahead.
I notice you haven't said anything. Anyway, when you talk about Panama's peaceful tradition of peaceful transfers of democratic power, you're talking about recent tradition, yes?
Yes, I was not making a large, sweeping, historic claim there.
Okay,
go ahead.
Before we get back to that and then other things, the breaking news just in the last 20 minutes or so about the Israelis finding the bodies of the three kidnapped teenagers. I'm wondering, one, are you aware of it? And if you are, what do you have to say about it? And two, have you been in contact with the Israelis or the Palestinians, for that matter?
We have seen the reports. I don't have anything to confirm from here. I would point you to the government of Israel. Certainly, as we've said many times throughout the course of the last several weeks, the kidnapping and, of course, any harm that has been done to these teenagers is a tragedy. We've been in close touch with the Israelis and the Palestinians over the course of the last several weeks. I don't have any new calls to update you on as of this morning.
Okay. If there are any, can you expedite?
Can we send them out? Yes, absolutely.
Letting us know.
Sure.
Since this began, you and the administration in general has been urging restraint, calling on both sides to show restraint. Does that remain your message even with this new development?
It certainly does. We have, as you noted, been in touch with both sides and have been urging continued security cooperation, that the Israelis and the Palestinians continue to work with one another on that, and we certainly would continue to urge that, in spite of obviously the tragedy and the enormous pain on the ground as a result.
Okay, and
let's just go one at a time. Go ahead, Matt.
The Israelis have all along said that Hamas was behind this. You have said that signs indicate that Hamas was involved, but you have stopped short of saying that you're 100% certain of it. Presuming that the Israelis do provide you, or you come up with your own 100% confirmation that it was involved, would that change, and I realize this is a hypothetical, but would Hamas's involvement in something like this be cause for the administration to rethink its support for the new Palestinian government?
Well, Matt, let me first say there's nothing new as it relates to our view in this specific case. And as we've noted in the past, but it's worth noting again, there are some similar circumstances that we have seen. I'm not going to make a prediction, of course. We do look at all kinds of information as it relates to our relationship with the Palestinians, our relationship with any entity that we work with. I'm not going to make a prediction. I don't know what the outcome will be of the final findings.
There were also, I think, more than a dozen rockets that were fired into southern Israel from Gaza today. Is that something that would make you rethink your position as it relates to the Palestinian government?
Well, as you know, renouncing violence is one of the requirements according to the quartet and one of the United States requirements. And as we said in the beginning, when the first announcement of the technocratic government was made, we're going to continue to review and take a look at the circumstances on the ground on a daily basis if needed.
But, I mean, quite apart from whether they played any role in the killing of the 3 teenagers, there were these rocket attacks today. Does that comport with a renunciation of violence?
Well, obviously, we would condemn any type of violence along those lines against the Israelis, and we expect, and President Abbas has on many occasions also renounced this type of action, and there's a certain responsibility in conveying that to any entities that the Palestinians are tied with.
But if I shoot you and at the same time as saying I renounce violence, that doesn't really make much sense. So you're saying, though, is that apart from the teenagers, because you don't know, you're not sure of the circumstances, just the rocket attacks themselves are not cause to have you rethink your relationship with the government.
Well, Matt, as we had stated from the beginning, and the point I was trying to make is that we would be constantly reviewing as it relates to actions on the ground, whether they are abiding by the components that they have, the pledges that they made at the beginning. So I don't have anything new to predict for you or outline, but we look at all of the circumstances that happen on the ground as we evaluate our relationship.
I'll stop after this.
Okay.
You think right now that they are abiding by the requirements?
Well, I think the Palestinian Authority and President Abbas and the technocratic government that doesn't involve members of Hamas, yes, they are making every effort to. Obviously, when there are incidents of violence, when there are rocket attacks, those are certainly cause for concern, and we take every incident into consideration.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I would have stopped after that, but you are sure. You're convinced that the Palestinian government is making what you just said, making every effort to abide by its commitments. That's the U.S. position?
Matt, I'm conveying is President Abbas has, as you know, renounced violence. He has condemned attacks. He has been a cooperative partner in an effort, even as it relates to the 3 teenagers over the last several weeks. Does that change the fact that we are concerned and can certainly condemn these rocket attacks and other incidents that occur? Certainly doesn't change that. But again, this is not a black and white issue. Go ahead.
Follow up on that, Jim, if I may. The technocratic government that you spoke of, as far as you're concerned, they are doing everything possible to refrain from the use of violence, rhetoric, or otherwise, right? Mm-hmm. So you are convinced that they are doing all they can to sort of keep the lid on as far as violence is concerned.
President Abbas and
his technocratic government, that is a national unity government.
I think I've stated it a few times, Saeed.
Yeah, let me just go back to the breaking news. As far as you have not heard anything yourself about to confirm the murder of the
We've
3
seen the
teenagers.
reports. I don't have anything to confirm from here.
Okay. Now, and as far as you know, the Israelis have not informed you that these bodies were found, and therefore we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Have they?
I don't have anything else to update you on.
Do you have any comment on the total closure of Hebron and its environment?
I don't have anything new to update you on.
Prime
Do
Minister
the new topic,
Netanyahu-
or go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, Prime Minister Netanyahu said on Sunday that the government had been able to identify 2 members of Hamas as being responsible. I know that you can't confirm the discovery of the bodies. Do you know whether they shared this information with their U.S. counterparts either in Tel Aviv or here in Washington over the weekend about these two suspects?
We have regular consultations and discussions. I don't have anything further to outline for you in this regard.
Something else which is related to Israel also.
Okay.
Prime Minister Netanyahu on Sunday called for an independent Kurdish state. What's your position, what's your reaction to his comments?
Well, the view of the United States is that a united Iraq is a stronger Iraq, and especially at this challenging and grave security, at a time of a grave security situation on the ground, we think it's even more important that all parties, the Shia, the Sunni, and the Kurds, remain united against the threat they face, and all countries should support that effort.
Does that mean your position is at odds with Israel's position on Iraq?
I'll let you make your own conclusions, but that's the position of the United States.
Sorry,
Go
I
ahead.
just want to go back to the kidnapping. One of the three teenagers is a U.S. citizen or dual citizen. To the best of your knowledge, have any demands been made, like ransom demands or anything, to the U.S. government?
I just don't have anything new to update you on this particular incident. Go ahead, and we'll go to Joe. Go ahead.
Just one more thing.
Okay.
I mean, it's clearly that the U.S. position now is at odds with not only Israel, but also Turkey, which has recently said that it will welcome an independent Kurdistan in Iraq. And on the other hand, many other people actually see America as being more on the side, like in alliance with Iran over Iraq, as both countries have stepped up their military and political support for the al-Maliki government to combat the insurgency, the Sunni insurgency. Is that true?
I'm not sure. What is your specific question?
Like
Sorry,
the
go ahead.
specific question is that are the United States and Iran unlikely allies in Iraq to combat the Sunni Islamic militants?
Well, I wouldn't put it in those terms. We've stated before from this podium, and the Secretary has stated that certainly ISIL is a threat to the region, including Iran. It is a threat. ISIL is a threat to all of the people of Iraq, whether they're Sunni, whether they're Shia, whether they're Kurds, and that's why we've been such strong advocates of moving the political process forward urgently to form a government, and of all parties to be united. We're all certainly familiar with the aspirations of the Kurdish people, and that hasn't changed. Has been the case for many years now. But the threat they're facing requires unity, and that's why we've been emphasizing it so strongly.
What do you mean you understand as the aspiration of the Kurdish people?
I think we all have seen the comments that have been made over the course of not just last week, but long before that. Go ahead, Joe.
Can I stay with ISIL,
Sure.
which have renamed themselves today the Islamic State, just IS, I believe. Does this mark a change in their offensive? Does it make the ground conditions more difficult for the Iraqi people and the Syrian people? What is your reaction to the news that they're trying to establish this caliphate over Iraq and Syria?
Well, we've seen these types of words or comparable claims from ISIL before. This declaration has no meaning to the people in Iraq and Syria. It only further exposes the true nature of this organization and its desire to control people by fear and edicts. It emphasizes even more so that this is a critical moment for the international community, for countries in the region, for all of the Iraqi people to unite against the threat that they face.
Does it show that in some ways the group believes, is assuming more confidence, that they believe that they are on a winning track here?
Well, I think it's, again, their strategy of, using a repressive ideology and conducting acts of ruthless terrorism against their people, against people across the region, has been consistent for some time now. So, in our view, this claim, these words, this declaration is consistent with that, and not a new, not providing new information.
And tomorrow the Iraqi Parliament's due to meet. Following the visit by Secretary Kerry to Iraq and Erbil, do you believe in this building that there will be an outcome which will start paving the way towards a new Iraqi government?
Well, as you noted, that was a big focus of the Secretary's meetings last week, not just in Iraq, but with leaders in the region, and in fact even with his European counterparts. Tomorrow we are continuing to urge, I should say, Iraqi leaders to come to an agreement on the 3 critical posts that are key to forming Iraq's next government: the speaker, the president, and prime minister, so that government formation can move forward as quickly as possible. We don't want to predict how quickly the outcome will occur. We will leave that to them, but they have, during meetings with Secretary Kerry, have committed to moving forward quickly, have committed to abiding by the process, so we will see what happens in the course of the coming days.
Given this announcement, how urgently is the U.S. viewing this development, especially in light of the fact that it just put in what many would argue is a small number of military advisors to help the Iraqi military figure out what it can or can't do to stop these fighters from continuing their march on to Baghdad?
And Roz, I'm sorry, are you referring
about the ISIL, IS, whatever they call themselves?
Sure.
What are officials doing about it? How does this change what the U.S. is trying to do, for example, to help Baghdad defend itself against these fighters?
Well, I think as I stated, but I'm happy to reiterate, these words, we've seen these types of words come from ISIL before. It's consistent with their claims in the past. It doesn't mean anything to the people of Iraq and the people of Syria. We remain both committed to a diplomatic process, and obviously, as you noted, military advisors have started arriving on the ground. We've continued to expedite our assistance and equipment as well, and we're taking every step in that regard. So I wouldn't overemphasize the impact of the claim. We're continuing to take steps, including the discussions the Secretary had all of last week on the political front to encourage the government to move forward with formation, but also to consider how we can best help address the threat on the ground.
Do you have any sense of what consultations are being held at the Secretary's level, at the Undersecretary level, with their counterparts, not just in the Middle East, but in Europe as well?
Well, the Secretary, I think it was read out on Friday that he spoke with President Barzani. He also spoke with Foreign Minister Davutoglu over the weekend. I think it's safe for all of you to assume that he'll be closely engaged in diplomatic conversations with both counterparts in the Middle East as well as Europe over the course of the coming days.
Did you have any comment, or did you comment on the Iraqis receiving 4 or 5 Sukhoi fighters, Russian fighters?
I think Marie may have spoken to this on Friday, but I'm happy to speak to it as well. Sure. We understand and have certainly seen reports about the purchase of equipment. I would remind you that Iraq has purchased military equipment from a range of countries in the past, including Russia, including the Czech Republic, South Korea, and others to fulfill their legitimate defense needs. We have a robust FMS program that will continue, and we've expedited in recent days. And certainly we are not surprised that Iraq would take steps to work with other countries in the region, as they have for some time, to gain the equipment that they need.
You don't have any problem with them receiving these Russian fighters?
Well, we don't.
Because you're holding your deliveries, for fear of falling in the wrong hand.
We're not holding. I think that's incorrect information. But
okay.
In terms of the first question, we don't oppose legal Iraqi efforts to meet the urgent military requirements. In fact, as you know, we're expediting our own assistance, and they have purchased military equipment from a variety of countries in the past, and so it's not a surprise that that has continued.
Can I ask you, on the Caliphate and Kurdistan questions, do you oppose the Caliphate idea in general? And if you do not, because you actually recognized one and had an ambassador to the last one, the Ottoman Empire, why you would, if you are opposed, if you're not opposed to a caliphate in J, is it just, let me rephrase this completely.
Okay.
Is it just this group forming a caliphate that you're opposed to, or an al-Qaeda-like group, a repressive group, or is it the whole idea in general that you don't like of Muslims coming together under one?
I think the concern I'm expressing is about this specific group,
specific,
this
okay.
extremist terrorist
Okay,
group, yes.
so then on the Kurdistan question and about what Prime Minister Netanyahu said, there are a lot of people who think that an independent Kurdistan is basically inevitable, especially and its potential statehood is being accelerated by what's going on the ground now. Why is the United States so wedded to the post-World War I borders?
Well, Matt, obviously it's up to the Iraqi people to determine what their future will be, not the United States. I think
if
our specific concern right now is that the largest threat they face is the threat of ISIL, and that they should be united and focused on that, and working together and continuing to work together. As you know, the Peshmerga and the Iraqi security forces have been working closely together over the last several weeks.
So in the end, in the long run, though, if all of Iraq was to agree to split, you would not be opposed if they were to
Well,
do
I'm not
that?
going to speculate on what the future will hold.
Well-
What we're looking at right now is the immediate threat that is posing a threat to the very security and stability of Iraq.
But you do agree that Kurdistan is basically conducting itself as a sovereign nation. I mean, it imports, exports goods, including the export of oil
Well,
to Israel and
you're
so on.
familiar, Saeed,
No,
because we've
yeah,
talked
yeah,
about it quite a
yeah,
bit, what our position is on the export and import of oil as well. And we believe that should go through the central Iraqi government.
Another Iraq-related question,
Okay.
which is to do with the
Because ISIL is the bigger threat, and they all need to confront this threat together. But the Kurdish forces have said it publicly that they're not going to fight ISIL unless they attack them. So they are going to just look and see the conflict. And they
Well-
don't want to be dragged into a sectarian war. That's what how they phrase it.
Well, but the Peshmerga, the Kurdish forces, have been working closely with the ISF over the past several weeks to confront this threat. And one of the points the Secretary made when he was there, meeting with leaders, was the fact that they do need to be united. They need to continue to band together against this threat. And it's not just a threat to Baghdad, it's a threat to all of Iraq, and it's a threat to all of the region. Go ahead.
You've seen the story, you will have seen the story in the New York Times today about Blackwater and the State Department calling off an investigation into its activities after your lead investigator was allegedly threatened. Wondering what you have to say about that.
I don't have a great deal to say about it, and I'm happy to take any questions that you have. I certainly understand the interest. I will note that the story referenced this as an investigation. This was not an investigation. These were ongoing contract reviews that we do on a regular basis. That's what the individuals were on the ground doing. Obviously, as you all know, this is an ongoing legal case, so there's very little we can say. But again, I know there are specific questions here, so I'm happy to take them if I
Well,
can.
an ongoing legal case has to do only with Nisar Square. This
You're correct.
apparently happened before then.
You're
so
right.
it would not be part of the ongoing legal
You're right.
case.
It is.
correct? Unless, of course, if there's another case that we don't know about, which involves the
not
State Department against Blackwater.
I'm not referencing a different legal
All right.
case. I'm just
So-
referencing the context here,
All
which I
right,
think is
so
relevant.
was the internal review, or sorry, what did you say, it was the something review, contract review, was the contract review halted because of a threat?
As I understand, there were steps taken at the time, given threats that people faced, but I don't have any additional information on it.
So you're saying, so that part of the story you're confirming, you're saying that the someone employed by Blackwater in Iraq threatened a State Department auditor, however you want to call it, who was conducting a contract review, and that resulted in the review being called off?
No, I apologize.
Okay.
I understand that there were reports of threats. Obviously, we take any of that seriously. I don't have any additional information beyond what I just shared.
Do you know what the result of the contract review was in question here? Was there a result, or did it end? Did the review not come to an end?
I don't have any additional information. Again, I understand the interest. This was 7 years ago, so we're looking to track down
I understand
more.
this predates your time and
I'm not-
even this administration, but this building stays the same pretty much.
I
as it
understand.
goes through.
I'm certainly validating your questions. I just don't have more information than what I've provided.
Do you know whether, because of this incident, that any steps were taken to essentially keep the contractors in their place? The story suggested that the contractors felt that they were above the authority of the U.S. government and had undue sway over certain embassy personnel. Are there policies in place that basically say to contractors, you are here, under the good graces of the U.S. government, and you need to know what your place is?
I'm not sure how to address your question, Roz. I'm not sure exactly what your question is. Maybe you can repeat it.
Well, essentially, if someone comes in, whether from the IG's office, Inspector General's office, or from some other auditing firm that's supposed to have the ability to talk to people, to look at records, to figure out if everything is being done according to rules and regulations, if that person's ability to do his or her job is proscribed because someone feels that he and his colleagues are above review, what's done to keep that from happening?
Well, let me just say, broadly speaking, the reason why contract reviews or any reviews are done are to take a look at circumstances on the ground and make sure they are happening with all taking all of the precautions and taking the appropriate process and pursuing the appropriate process. When there are findings that they are not, certainly those are reviewed and taken into account. I don't have anything more specific in this case, but that's why reviews, broadly speaking, are done, to look at the information and ensure that contractors or any individuals are operating at the top capacity. Go ahead.
Let me try one more.
Okay.
Certainly in places that are war zones, and Iraq in 2007 was clearly still a war zone as far as the U.S. government was concerned. It is understandable that in the middle of a crisis that people's relationships will stray beyond normally accepted bounds of behavior. Are there rules in place today for people who are serving for the State Department in high-risk zones and the contractors with whom they work? Are there rules clearly spelling out what the extent of their professional relationship can be?
Sure. Broadly speaking, let me take it and see what information we can provide.
Also take the question as to whether this contract review was undertaken either because of any concern that this company was operating somehow outside of the bounds that it should have been, or if that kind of concern arose during the review.
Certainly. Sure. New
Then
topic?
I have just very, very quickly. This happened, of course, in 2007, but there are allegations at the time that, in fact, higher ups in the State Department took the side of Blackwater against the State Department auditor. Could you find out?
I just don't have any more information. I'm happy to take the
because, right
let me
after
finish.
that-
I'm happy to take the questions that have been addressed. I don't think I have anything more, so let's move on to a new
Because
subject. Go ahead,
this
Leslie. We're moving on. Go ahead, Leslie.
In North Korea, it says they're going to try the 2 detained Americans. Have you had any notice on this, and any comment, please?
Sure. Well, we are aware of reports that U.S. citizens Matthew Miller and Jeffrey Fowle will face trial in North Korea. There's no greater priority for us than the welfare and safety of U.S. citizens abroad. Out of humanitarian concern for Mr. Fowle and Mr. Miller and their families, we request North Korea release them so they may return home. We also request North Korea pardon Kenneth Bay and grant him special amnesty and immediate release so he may reunite with his family and seek medical care. Beyond the reports, Leslie, I don't have any other official independent information, I guess I should say. I can also convey that the Embassy of Sweden in North Korea visited Mr. Fowle on June 20th and Mr. Miller on May 9th and June 21st. And the embassy, of course, regularly requests consular access to all U.S. citizens in North Korean custody.
Are they being held in the same place?
I don't have any more information on that. I'm happy to check and see if there's more we can provide.
Presumably, because you're now able to give their names, they've signed these privacy waiver
They have?
things. So, can you tell us under what circumstances they were both arrested and what charges they might be facing?
There is additional information we're going to share. They did sign a Privacy Act waiver, but it doesn't obligate the department to share all information about each case and each circumstances, especially when it comes to ensuring or taking every step we need to help return them home.
So you cannot give us any indication of the charges they could be facing?
I don't have any more information to provide.
Quite apart, this is a new one on me, and I've been quite apart from this case. Are you saying that if someone signs a Privacy Act waiver, if we ask a question, you still don't have to answer it?
Well, I think Privacy Act waiver gives us the ability to provide more information, and we do that as often as we possibly can. And there are some cases where it's not in the benefit of the case or the individuals to provide more information.
But you make that decision, not the person?
Well, there are cases, there are processes that we undergo to ensure we can provide as much information as possible, and there are times when it's not appropriate to.
Well,
this is one of those times.
Let's not forget about this case, 'cause, just in general, I don't get it. So if I sign a Privacy Act waiver saying I want you to tell the world about my case someplace, and one of my colleagues here asks you a question about it, you can say, well, he signed the waiver, but we just don't feel like telling you what the information is, so we're not going to?
That's not exactly how it works, Matt, but
Well, I
we
don't
provide
understand.
as much information as we can.
As you can, but if I've authorized you to go out and speak and tell and say what happened to me and what my condition is and everything, you can still decide to say
Well,
no, we're not going to. You can.
I
you
think
can say
if
nothing.
you were detained, you would want us to take steps that are in the best interests of your safety and security, wouldn't we? Wouldn't you?
Well, yeah. If I've signed the waiver saying I want my story to be told, I would expect you to tell my story if you were asked about it, not to say.
I'm
to
sure
tell
you've
people,
seen a Privacy Act waiver and what they look like.
I have.
It's not exactly stating that. So we make decisions about what information is appropriate to provide in the best interest of citizens who are detained overseas. And we will
Well,
we'll
in
do
this
the
case,
same for you.
For that matter, you could say that you're not going to release any information ever, no matter what, no matter whether whether it's signed or
I
not.
think we make every effort to release as much information as we can.
So in
Go
this
ahead, Jen.
case, you can't confirm that they're facing trial. Even if you're not going to tell us what the charges are, you cannot confirm independently that they're facing trial.
I can't, and that's not related to the Privacy Act waiver. That's related to the fact that these are reports. We don't have additional information
So the
to
Swedish
provide.
embassy hasn't been able to convey that information to you, or they haven't been given that
I
information?
just don't have any more information to provide.
And can you give us an idea of what the embassy might have told you about their state of health when they saw them on June 20th and 21st?
I don't. I'm happy to check with them and see if there's more to provide. Obviously, we're requesting their release for humanitarian purposes. I will see if there's more on their health that we are able to provide to all of you.
I imagine that you've been in touch with the families of both these men?
We have been over the course of time. I don't have any new timing on that, but I can also check on that question
Did
as
the
well.
families make any request of this building to not release certain information about their loved ones, in particular why they chose to go to North Korea?
I'm just not going to be able to provide any more information.
Can you just say in general, because we have these cases coming up every so often involving U.S. citizens, the U.S. doesn't have diplomatic relations with North Korea. I assume that if I just decided I wanted to go, it would be very difficult for me to go without facing some sort of repercussion. What can be done to dissuade people
Well, we
from
don't
trying
track
to go?
the travel of United States citizens, but obviously we put travel warnings out, Roz, to
Yeah, but
make
if
sure
I-
people understand the circumstances they're walking into.
But certainly, if I'm coming back through Dulles and I'm going through border control, I'm going to get the once over, maybe the once over, when they see that I have a visa, from DPRK in my passport. What can be done to dissuade people from going and almost certainly getting themselves into trouble every time an American steps foot on North Korean soil?
Well, that's one of the reasons that we provide regular updates that are available on the State Department website that we talk about frequently. All of you report about these cases as well, so I would encourage you to continue to do that.
And one of the older man, if I'm not mistaken, apparently was arrested after people found a Bible in his hotel room. And we all know how the DPRK feels about Christianity. Is it an unnecessarily provocative act for those who think that they're trying to spread the gospel to try to go to North Korea, knowing that they're running the risk of being arrested, being treated however the North Koreans are able to cover up whatever they do to them, and then expecting the U.S. government to come to their rescue, even though if you have a blue passport, you expect your government to come save you?
Well, Roz, I think we are focused on the health and safety and well-being of United States citizens wherever they are in the world, and we take every step to ensure they either are returned home or they are safe. We have consular access. You know how we feel about freedom of religion and freedom of and being able to express that. But certainly the reason we provide information about a range of countries is to ensure people know what circumstances they're walking into. And I don't have the North Korea travel warning in front of me, but I can assure you that it suggests strongly not to travel at all to North Korea. Go ahead, Allie.
Just two quick questions on that. Do you have any more on at what level the communication between State Department officials and the families of the men who have been detained have been taking place?
I do not. I can take that in the list of questions as well.
And then in the travel warning, there's plenty of caveats about the fact that these travel companies can't provide for safety of individual Americans. But I'm wondering, does this department take a position on these companies actually doing these tours and seemingly at times willfully putting American citizens in danger? Do you take a position on just the merits in general of these tours being conducted?
Well, I'm not going to get that specific, but clearly any tour company or any individual can access the information that we make available about travel and the warnings of travel to North Korea as well as other countries. And so I think that states pretty clearly where we stand about any type of travel. North Korea? Go ahead.
North Korea, as you know well, has launched the Scud missile last September. Last Saturday, sorry. Mm-hmm. And Mary, your colleague Mary, told us that we are always concerned whenever they launch anything. Mm-hmm. So what about this time? We have some readout or...
Well, we're aware of reports that North Korea launched 2 projectiles from its east coast on June 29th, so just yesterday. We're continuing to closely monitor North Korean activities and the situation on the peninsula. We urge North Korea to refrain from taking provocative actions and instead fulfill its international obligations and commitments. But I don't have any further information on the type or specific details of the projectiles launched in this case.
As you know, President Park and Xi Jinping of China is going to meet in this week. Does the United States ask something, both China or South Korea to send a message to North Korea?
Well, as 2 of our vital partners in the 6-party talks that we engage with closely on the threat from North Korea, I'm certain, and I would refer you to them, but I would bet that this will be a part of their discussion, and we'll continue to engage closely with both China and Japan, China and South Korea, as it relates to their discussions. And certainly, as you know, we also encourage dialogue and restraint as it relates to relationships in the region as well.
One more thing, Japan will also continue to talk to North Korea about abduction issues after this. Are you consulting with Japan with regard to this timing and lift the sanction?
Well, we support Japanese efforts to resolve the abductions issues, and we encourage them to do so in a transparent manner. And we'd refer you to them for more information about their talks.
Can I just say on North Korea?
Sure.
North Korea this morning proposed that the 2 Koreas should halt hostile military activities later on this week. Mm-hmm. This appears to be ahead of the visit by Chinese President Xi Jinping. What is your reaction to this? Is this something that's welcome, or is it just a cynical ploy by Pyongyang to try and have some kind of image of being peace-loving ahead of the visit?
Well, broadly speaking, we certainly support improved inter-Korean relations, but with these specific exercises, these are defense-oriented and they're designed to enhance the ability to respond to any potential contingency that could arise. They're designed to increase readiness to defend South Korea and protect the region, and they occur around the same time every year and are a regular part of what happens in the region. So we've seen these calls before, and we certainly see the value in these exercises and the value in them continuing.
So you're not going to halt the exercises ahead of the visit by Xi Jinping to North Korea?
I would refer you to the Department of Defense, but I'm not aware of any plans to do that.
On the 6-party talks, does the U.S. have any optimistic plan to resumption of 6-party talk future or within this year?
Well, again, it remains in the ball. The ball remains in North Korea's court to take steps to abide by their international obligations and the 2005 joint statement. They haven't shown an indication of their plans to do that, so I don't have any prediction of a resumption.
Thank you.
Sure.
In an hour or so, or less than an hour, 40 minutes from now, the ceasefire is supposed to expire. I noticed that there was another four-way phone call today between President Putin, Chancellor Merkel, President Hollande, President Poroshenko. And I'm wondering, and out of that, it looks like everyone kind of agreed that it should be extended, with the exception of maybe Poroshenko, because I'm not sure that it has been extended yet. Do you support an extension of the ceasefire? And do you think that the Russians have met or taken steps to meet the criteria that was laid out by the EU on Friday to do by today?
Well, whether to extend the ceasefire is a decision that Ukraine and only Ukraine will make, and we'd certainly support the decision, whatever decision that they make. But it takes two to implement a ceasefire. And to answer your second question, there are still ongoing reports of fighters from Russia and Russia-backed separatists continuing to attack Ukrainian government positions. There are still troops on the border. There are still armed militants in Ukraine who are posing a threat to the Ukrainian people. So there are steps that we've long been calling for that are a part of what President Poroshenko has been calling for that Russia has not done. Now, they have taken some steps that have been positive steps moving forward, but there's a great deal more that they need to do in order to de-escalate the situation.
Is it your understanding that well, first of all, this ceasefire doesn't seem to have been much of a ceasefire at all from the very, very beginning. But I'm wondering because there have been a lot of reports of violations on both sides. But I'm wondering if the U.S. government's understanding or the U.S. government's position is that the Ukrainian government's violations of the ceasefire have come only in response to them being attacked themselves in self-defense. Is that your understanding?
That is my understanding of what's happening on the ground. And, the Ukrainians were the ones who called for the ceasefire and exhibited admirable restraint in trying to implement the ceasefire. But there were steps that were taken from Russian-backed separatists that certainly didn't abide by it.
So the administration's position is that the Ukrainian government has and still is still showing admirable restraint in trying to keep this ceasefire alive, and that violations are the fault of the separatists.
Yes, and certainly
correct?
we'd be concerned about any violations, but I don't know if there are specific ones you're speaking to, our reports or anything.
No, just in general, just what, not anything specific. And then on the sanctions issue, you are not prepared. The administration is not yet prepared to pull the trigger on new sanctions.
Well, we remain prepared to impose additional sanctions, including sectoral sanctions, should circumstances warrant, in coordination with our allies and partners. But I don't have anything to announce for all of you today.
My last one on Ukraine has to do with the refugee numbers. I asked Marie about this.
I know you had
last week. Yes, we had a bit of an exchange.
An active debate.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say debate. It was
Sorry,
an active
discussion.
exchange. Is it still your position that the numbers offered by the UN last week of 110,000 are inaccurate or not credible, as she said?
Well, I think they certainly, the context here is incredibly important because the UN Refugee Agency claims less than 10% of the 110,000 that they have given as a number. 9,600 people have applied for asylum. That is a significantly lower number. So by noting that 110,000 Ukrainians have arrived in Russia, which we don't have a validation of that either, it doesn't give context of in what capacity or how, and it certainly doesn't give validity to Russian claims that hundreds of thousands of people are pouring over the border seeking asylum in Russia.
Okay, well, I mean, it seems to be a bit, I don't know, disingenuous to say that because only a small number of these people have actually applied for asylum and refugee status in Russia, that it seems to be disingenuous to say that 110,000 people haven't fled.
We're still
You-
looking into, I know Marie said
But
this on Friday.
your position is not based on, well, tell me this, is your position based on the fact that that less than 10% of 110,000 people have actually formally applied for refugee status?
Well, that's part of the context here. We're still talking to the UN agency about how they arrived at these numbers, but I think that's an important component of the context.
Okay, but that doesn't mean that 100,000 people didn't flee. Just because they haven't formally applied doesn't mean that 100,000 haven't fled, right?
Well, it doesn't mean that they have either. So
Well,
I think we're.
Yeah, but I know. But the UN is starting from a position, or telling the world that 110,000 people have fled, and it just seems a bit odd if your argument is, well, only 10,000 of them actually applied for refugee status. That means that the whole figure is
Well,
wrong.
Matt, I think part of it is it's unclear if they're relying on Russian claims, and so we're just in discussions with them about how they arrived at these numbers, and I think there's some context that we felt was important to
Okay,
provide.
well, and I had this with, Marie and I had this exchange as well. I mean, is this the only case where you are not sure of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees' numbers? I mean, why do you take their word, the numbers in Syria, or outside of Syria, the numbers who have fled Syria, if you're not willing to take them not willing to accept them in this case?
Well, I'm certain if we had a question about the validity of the numbers there, we would have raised it as well. But again, we're in conversations with them, and if there's more to say, we'll say it.
To the best of your knowledge, they have not responded with, and what are you actually asking them? How did you get your numbers?
Mm-hmm.
And then,
How did you arrive at the numbers?
and then are
exactly?
you going to tell them that they have to prove it once they to tell you? I mean, I'm not sure what you're looking for. It seems to me that in almost every other situation, you guys accept the information that's given by the UNHCR, and this case is somehow different, and I don't understand. I'm not exactly sure why. Why is this case different than Syria, where you also don't have, people on the eyes on the ground?
We're just looking for more context and information on the numbers, and we'll be in touch with them about how they arrived at them.
Say something about the ceasefire.
I'm
Because
sorry,
it
which
was
piece?
unilateral, the ceasefire. That was announced, I guess, unilaterally by Poroshenko, correct? By the president of
Correct.
Ukraine. So in this conversation today, where they asked him to extend the ceasefire, it would be up to him to declare that, since it is only one-sided.
Up to President Poroshenko,
Right,
yes.
right. Are you sort of leaning on him, or are you asking him to extend the ceasefire?
It's a decision for Ukraine and
I
Ukraine
understand, but
only to make. Obviously, we're in close consultations.
Urging him to extend the ceasefire.
Again, it's a decision for Ukraine to make. Let's just do a few more. Go ahead in the back.
On Nigeria, is the United States still working with Nigeria on the abducted schoolgirls? There's been really nothing in recent weeks, and are you guys still working with officials on this?
We certainly are. The search for the kidnapped girls is ongoing. The Nigerians remain in the lead. We have a team that's been on the ground for several weeks now. We'll continue to evaluate what additional resources we can provide. I wish I did have an update on it, but unfortunately there's not one at this point to provide.
Weekend that some residents in northeastern Nigeria have basically formed their own militias because the Nigerian military can't or won't come into their areas to protect them from Boko Haram attacks. What has the U.S. been saying to Goodluck Jonathan and to his government about the need to mobilize their military and to be more proactive rather than having small groups of people who don't have firearms going up against people with semi-automatic rifles?
Well, Roz, our discussions with Nigeria about addressing the threat of Boko Haram have been ongoing for months now. There's no doubt there are challenges the Nigerian government faces and those who are taking on this threat on the ground, and we're certainly working with them to boost their capacity and advise them on how best to address it. But I'm not going to outline it further than that.
But doesn't it worry people in this building that the security situation inside what is arguably the largest economy in sub-Saharan Africa, that people don't feel they can trust their own security apparatus and that they have to take up weapons themselves to try to protect themselves from a vital security threat.
Well, Raz, I'd remind you that we, the United States, has boosted our resources that we're providing to the Nigerian government in order to help them take on the threat of Boko Haram because of our rising concern about that threat. So we too feel that there needs to be increased capacity, and our resources and our efforts have also backed that up. Go ahead, Joe.
There were reports that there were a series of attacks yesterday in Borno State, in 4 villages outside of the area where the girls were kidnapped. Explosives were thrown into churches, and around 50 people were killed. Do you have any reaction to that? Any information you can share?
I don't have new information. I know there are similarities. It fits the Boko Haram's recent pattern in terms of target attacks and methods of attack. They haven't seen it, unless it's happened in the last hour. I don't think they have come out and claimed responsibility, but regardless of that, we condemn the reported attacks on 4 villages near Chibok. Our sympathies go out to the victims and their families. We remain committed to helping the government of Nigeria address the threat posed by the criminal terrorist group. Our embassy continues to support Nigerian efforts to bring about the safe recovery of the abductees and to advise the government of Nigeria on its response. And as I noted in response to Raz's question, certainly we all are concerned about the rising threat of Boko Haram, and we have been increasing our assistance as a result of that.
But to Rosa's point, we've got some leaders from the Chibok area who said that the military didn't even bother to go and attempt to go to the scene of this latest attack, which would suggest that they're in complete disarray, despite any efforts that the Americans might be offering them on the ground. I mean, are you finding that they're responsive to what you're trying to aid them with, or are they just not listening at all?
Well, I don't have any validation of all of those reports, and what I know is that because of our concern about the threat that's risen over the course of the last several months, obviously the kidnapping, other attacks that have happened since then have prompted us to increase our assistance, to do more training, to do more to boost the capacity of the Nigerian military and of the Nigerian government. So I don't have anything to speak to as it relates to reports of whether or not they went to the villages, because I don't have any additional information on that.
Can you take the question on what additional assistance has been provided to the Nigerian military in particular, whether it's lethal aid, non-lethal aid, whether it's training, whether it's advising, whether it's working in teams? Can you provide some more detail on that?
I'm happy to outline it, Raz, as we've done many times before from here, but we maintain a significant level of military cooperation that includes increasing counterterrorism capabilities to counter IEDs and enhance its civilian military operations. We're providing additional equipment for Nigeria's Intelligence Fusion Center. We're also providing military training and other assistance to help professionalize the Nigerian military and increase its maritime security and peacekeeping capabilities. We also work with the Special Boat Service and other Leahy-cleared conventional and special operations unit. We're providing law enforcement assistance, including by training Nigerian law enforcement officials on CT investigations, basic forensics, border security, counter-IED, and post-blast investigations and crisis management. We also support programs and initiatives to combat violent extremist ideology, including job training and education. And we're working with civil society, non-governmental organizations, and various levels of government to provide humanitarian and development assistance. So as you can see, our assistance has a broad breadth, and we feel that working with all of those areas is vital to continuing to counter the threat. Let's just do a few more here. Panama, go ahead.
Thank you. As you probably know, President Ma Ying-jeou of Taiwan will also visit Panama to attend the ceremony. Does Secretary Kerry has any plan to talk to him officially or unofficially?
There's no plans at this point in time. Do we have one more in the back?
It's quite hard to meet him. What is your position?
Well, you're familiar with our position on Taiwan as it relates to our unofficial relationship. I don't have any. There's no meeting planned. Go ahead.
Yeah.
regarding Japanese collective self-defense, so Japanese cabinet seems to approve the use of collective self-defense tomorrow. So what does the U.S. government expect from it, and what's going to be the reaction?
Well, we've spoken about this in the past, I believe, and our view that Japan has, every right to conduct them, to provide the necessary, to equip themselves, I should say. Sorry, it's a tongue twister. To equip themselves in the way they deem necessary. We encourage them to do that in a transparent manner, and we remain in touch with them about these important issues. All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.